Hello, Augies Worldwide. I'm Dave Kassler, amateur radio call sign KE0OG, here with another episode of Ask Dave. And this question comes from a patron, Glen Cashin, KE2CAE. That's a long question, so what I'm going to try to do is interject answers as we read the question. It says, thanks, Dave. My station is in the making. I purchased a Yaesu FT-710 during the Black Friday sales at HRO as an incentive to myself to get the general done. Now, I usually discourage that, but he didn't want to pass up a sale. So the 710 is a very nice radio. The reference station is an ICOM 7310, but you can substitute in your favorite station for that. Okay, now he did pass the general test, and I congratulate you for that. And I'm ready to build my station. I have been following your reference station build. Now, the reference station may be found at dkassler.com/reference. It's all the parts and pieces you need to put together a general or extra station. And you can duplicate the reference station exactly if you want. You'll get a very nice station if you do so. Or you can, mix and match with other stuff like he has done with the rig here. Now, I will point out that whenever I do a video about HF, I will be using the 7310 as the radio on which to demonstrate that. But all the modern radios are fine. The 7310, I think, is pushing a decade old. So the FT-710 is a new radio, very nice, very popular. Okay, it's got an acoustic enhancement to the sound that I am told sounds great. I tried to hear it at Pacificon a year ago, but the place was just too noisy to hear the difference. And personally, I prefer headphones anyway. Okay, it says, now that I'm ready to pass the test, it says, I've been following your reference station build, but I'm really not sure which way to go with an antenna. Now, let me tell you the third rule of antennas. The first rule of antennas is everything affects everything. The second rule of antennas is height matters. The third rule of antennas is any antenna is better than no antenna. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the options he is considering. Now, I'll spoil the suspense and tell you that just about any of these would work just fine. Now, I have my favorites, but let's take a look at his options here. I have 83 feet along my back fence, which is 65 feet from my house. Okay, so if you go across that, you could get an end-fed half-wave up there for 80 through 10, which is about 125 feet long. And if you put a pole up in the middle and you make it an inverted V, it'll work on NVIS, it'll work on all the bands very nicely. Although the SWR will not be perfect, you will find that the tuner in your radio should be able to handle it fine. Okay, it's another 20 plus feet from where the coax would enter the house to where my station will be in my basement. I will mention right now where that coax enters your house is where your ground rod goes. And then you put a lightning arrestor there, and that way you try to keep the lightning out of the house. Don't put lightning arrestors in the house. They belong outside, period. Okay, I don't want to run an antenna from the roof of my house to the fence line in the back, so I thought I would buy or build a 30-foot pole. I did a video not long ago about the Stephen Klein design for a 30-foot pole. I think it cost us a couple $100 to put together, and you can buy fiberglass poles for that if you want. The pole needs to be guyed. Now, I will warn you that a 30-foot metal pole, it may not be that heavy, but if you're at the bottom of it, you're 6 foot tall, that pole is 5 times taller than you are. And the torque moment, on that you can be standing on the ground, the wind hits that, and you will not be able to hold that pole up. Ask us how we know. Okay, so 30-foot pole to install in the middle of the fence line. I would string the center feed of a multi-band dipole up to the top and invert the antenna, landing about 6 feet above ground on either end next to the fence. I'd pull it closer to you if you could. I would run RG8U underground. RG8U is so out of date. It is so 1940s. Get either RG8X, which will work fine for even fairly long runs on HF. Although I'd recommend RG213, or if you want to spend just a little bit extra, considering this will be your primary antenna, you will run LMR 400. Now, the problem with LMR 400 is that to do it right, you need to use Times microwave tools and connectors, which are not cheap. I tried putting a standard crimp connector on LMR 400, and the Keystone Cops comedy routine that followed is in one of my videos. It just was a problem. By the way, I got contacted shortly after by Times Microwave, who said, look in the box. We send you some of the proper tools. And they're really nice. Really nice. They're crimp, both for center conductor and outer conductor. They're really wonderful little connectors, little $25 connectors. Okay, I would string the center feed of a multiband dipole up to the top and invert the antenna, landing about 6 feet above the ground on either end next to the fence. Get that thing a little closer to your house because there is some loss for those distances. Let's see. I would run RG8, well, let's just say RG213. Underground, make sure it's rated for direct burial. Okay, from the antenna pole to the house, then into the shack with all of the necessary lightning arresting attachments and grounding outside the house. Very good. Now, if you're going to go that far away from the house, I would suggest putting an additional lightning protector at the ground where that feed line comes down to the ground. Then, in the trench, get a number 6 wire that's bare copper stranded number 6 wire, which is going to cost you a little bit, and run it from the ground rod out by the antenna all the way to the ground rod that's outside your house. That's called bonding, and use clamp type connectors for this. Don't do any soldering with that. Now, if you want, you can weld it. If you weld with copper, or you can use, they've got these little thermite kits that'll do the welding for you. The purpose of this is to keep the ground at the same distance on either end. It also helps protect the cable underneath. Now, if you have rodents in your area, you may run into a little bit of a problem. You can run the coax through a steel conduit or something like that. That's getting really expensive. Or CMT or something, which will stop the rodents pretty much from getting in. But please note that any pipe you put underground will fill with water eventually. Okay. Let's see. We string the center 6 feet above the ground, RG8 underground, lightning. Okay, the only problem would be bonding the antenna ground to the ground of my electrical box way on the other side of my house. Is that bond a necessity? I would say it's best practice. Okay. If you look at all the codes and everything, and look at the Motorola book on mobile stations, all of which are mentioned in Ask Dave number 8, you will want to go ahead and bond that. Now, same type of thing. Number 6 wire, stranded, bare, copper. You can bury it or just lay it on the ground. Buried is best. Laying on the ground is a good interim solution. But the reason that you want to do that is keep all your grounds at the same potential. Now, if the area is struck by lightning, the absolute voltage as measured to say ground under the sea, will go up. If everything in your house goes up together, there's no damage. And then when it comes back down, there's no damage because everything in the house and your radio station is getting the same effect at the same time. That's why we bond. Okay. Now, so yes. Is that really necessary? I'm going to say it's best practice. Okay. If you read the ARRL, the second edition book on grounding, you will find that it is considered mandatory, but I will go so far as to say that it's best practice. And meaning best practice means that this is what the most successful hams do, this practice. That makes it a best practice, okay? And I would really recommend it, okay? Now, regarding the dipole, I am considering the Alpha Delta DXCC fan dipole, which is the bigger brother of DXEE that didn't work for your reference station. The CC, that's the DXCC, should have the length to work across 40, 20, 15, and 10 without much compromise, I hope. There's a video that I did for the ARRL, which is up on their site. I should put a link in the description below, where my assistant and I put up a 40-meter fan dipole. The 40-meter fan dipole was built entirely from scratch. Okay, it was full-length 40, full-length 20, 15, and 10. Although I think we did 3 bands. We did 40, 20, and 10. The thing is that the 40 meter can be used for 15 too. And the thing worked like a charm. I'm going to redo that video so I can take the appropriate excerpts from it and put it up as an Ask Dave video. I haven't done that yet. Okay, now let's start talking. The DXCC is built like a tank, okay? The reason that the EE doesn't work across all of 40 is because it actually is an extension of the 20 with the trap. When you put extra inductance in a line like that, extra reactance, it raises the Q of the element, which means that it covers less of the band. So the 40 part on that will cover either the upper or lower part of the band or whatever you decide to tune it for. Another option I'm considering is to construct a trap dipole myself. I am very much a DIY, do-it-yourselfer, so I'm up to that task. Yes. Look in the ARRL antenna book. There are plans in there for doing that. Okay. So which option would be better, a fan dipole or trap dipole? Well, you can build a fan dipole by yourself. Okay, if you build a fan dipole for 40, 20, and 10, you will find that it's easy to do. It tunes up on all bands. We did not bring the things down at different angles. We actually took some plastic pipe and hung it along the thing so that it would just keep the wires apart, but they're still kind of parallel. I do have a picture of that, which we can include right here in this video. Okay, now, another option, the end-fed half-wave. I like end-fed half-wave antennas. You can put up an end-fed antenna, and it looks like you've got lots of room in there to do it. Keep the unun, it's an unun, the feed point, up near your house, about 3 feet away from the house with a piece of rope in between. I say 3 feet because I did some simulations and found that if you keep your antenna 3 feet from something metal, they won't interact that much. But if it's closer than that, the piece of metal starts to become part of the antenna. Okay, so should I consider something different? I like the end-fed half-wave. ARRL makes a kit for an end-fed half-wave that I believe is still under $100. It covers all of 40 up through most of 10. okay? And it covers, does not cover 30, but it covers 20, 15, and 10. Now, if you lengthen that antenna out to about 125 feet, it will cover 80, a part of 80, without any special arrangements. It will cover the part of 80 down at the bottom where FT8 is. Okay, and it will cover all of 40, none of 30, none of 60. May cover part of 30. It will cover 20, do a pretty good job on 17, good job on 15, fair job on 12, and a good job on 10. Okay, and some of those will even work a little bit on 6 meters. Okay, that kit is less than $100. You can buy it from the league. Now, you said you're a do-it-yourselfer. I had that kit sitting here forever because I was afraid to drill the holes for it. I'm not much of a mechanical person. But finally, my assistant and I just forced ourselves into action and made that, and it works fine. This is the league kit. This is what the unun looks like. This right here is held up by whatever you're going to use to hold it up. And then this is where the antenna attaches. You want to kind of loop that through there to make sure that you've got some strain relief. Now the coax comes up here, and then this is for a counterpoise. Now, you probably won't need a counterpoise if your coax length to where it goes into your house is fairly long, 20 feet, something like that. You may not need a counterpoise. Now, I broke this one, so I put some special tape on it to kind of keep the water out. I also put a couple little weep holes down here at the bottom to keep water from collecting inside. The top half of this piece of plastic with a gasket inside to help keep the water out. You will have to drill the holes, and that's what made me go mad. Inside this is a balun that needs to be, not a balun, a transformer that needs to be wound. Turns out it's really easy to do. Break. If you are a DIYer, you can do this. Now this is advertised as for 40 and on up, because that's all the wire they give you when you get the kit. But if you extend that wire, the device itself says 3.5 to 30 megahertz. Okay, so it will go longer. By the way, use the league instructions. They have instructions for putting it together. It actually comes from a company, and the company is HF Kits, and all the instructions are in metric. If you like metric, that's fine. But all my tools and stuff for drilling and things like that are in imperial units. Okay, so yeah, I really like the end-fed half-wave idea. I know this is just a starting point, and I will likely change whatever it is I end up with now. Oh yeah. Probably the first thing you'll replace will be the antenna, but I will tell you this, if you start with an end-fed half-wave, you are going to be pleased. Now, if you want, you can build the thing as an inverted V by having one end attached to the house, your tall pole in the middle of the yard, and then come down to a pole or something on the other side. Make sure that you put enough notification in there of trip hazards, because if the children from next door are playing in your yard, they don't know that it's a hazardous place. So make sure that you tell them that. Another thing I like about the end-fed half-wave is that the antenna connection is right close to where you are. You don't have wire, coax stretched out across the yard like I do. You should see my backyard. It's full of antennas. Okay, now, would like to focus on being on the air before I go nuts experimenting with antenna topologies. Good idea. Thanks again for all you do to support amateur radio. Best, Glen Cashin, KE2CAE. Okay, I think I answered your questions. I tried to. I'm steering you toward an end-fed half-wave because they're great antennas. You may have to tinker a little bit Normally, if your piece of coax to your lightning arrestor is 20 to 30 feet, you're not going to have to worry about the counterpoise. Now, that means the outside shield of the coax is acting as your counterpoise. That's why you want that grounded at the lightning arrestor before it goes into the building, so that you won't get any of that counterpoise-ish stuff into your radio. Okay? So, there you go. There you have it. I'm really excited for you and your new general class license, and I hope you find ham radio to be as marvelous a hobby as I do. Now, my recommendation has always been, for a long time, that you get your general, set aside further studies, get your station on the air, get experienced with HF, how it works, work a few contests, work a little DX, do a lot of rag chewing, talk to people who are doing POTA and SOTA, or maybe activate a part yourself. That radio you got will work fine in your car too, and you can take like a 12-volt marine deep cycle battery with you to power it. There are all kinds of neat things that you can do. So do that for a couple years, then go for your extra, and it will mean so much more to you when you do it. It's not merely passing a test. It is actually climbing to the heights of amateur radio. Okay, now, if those watching have found this video interesting or helpful or useful, please subscribe. It really helps me if you will just subscribe. If you would like to be notified of future videos, click the bell. One of the things you will be notified about is our weekly live streams, which are on Thursdays at 6:45 p.m. to 8:15 p.m. U.S. Mountain Time. Okay? Now, when we change the time to savings time, daylight savings time, it'll still be local 6:45 p.m. So it shifts by an hour in UTC. We usually have people from all over the world. Normally we chat and share things that have gone on. But if you have a question, ask it. I will endeavor to answer it in real time. If not, maybe we'll pull up Google and take a look, see what we can find. Okay, so there you have it. In the next chart or so, there will be a place that lists places that you can help support this channel financially. Please do so. I've got to pay for the sleepy guy behind the camera so that we can get all of these videos done. He's Aidan. He is my assistant and does a mighty fine job. Thank you all very much, and until we next meet, 7.